Hi, it's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. Welcome to this session on the Catholic Business Wisdom series. Today's topic, the regulatory system. What I'm intending to do in today's topic is work with you on all of the laws and regulations that will govern your work as a business owner. If you own a small business or if you are a major shareholder in a large corporation, you're going to be directed, you're going to be controlled, you might say, by the regulatory system. The regulatory system has built up over many decades. In fact, it's almost impossible to be on top of it all. Today I'm going to cover 13 topics with you very briefly, very quickly. But these 13 topics are areas where there is going to be some kind of law or regulation or other governing behavior that will tell you what you have to do, and it will limit you. And so the whole point of regulation is that you're going to be limited. It's very unlikely that you're going to be expanding your reach or your abilities because of these regulatory systems. So I'm going to go down all 13 of these. And so the first one I'll begin with is the criminal code. If you're in Canada or in the United States, whatever the name of the legislation, there is definite body of law that tells you whether you're doing something legal or illegal, whether it's in civil law or criminal law. And so generically we call it the criminal codes. Honestly, as a business owner, as a business executive, it is your responsibility to know what goes on in all 13 of these, because it has always been said, ignorance of the law is no excuse. It is expected of us as business owners that we're going to do our research. So, number one, criminal code by other names. Number two, global legislation, international agreements. I'm particularly thinking here of the transfer of currency between countries. It's a protective device against money laundering, and there's of course a whole body of law that has grown up around this. So you should be aware in your business, particularly if you're an export business, that you are aware of the rules and the legislation on global cash transfers. The third topic is probably the most hated, the most detested, and that's the income tax system. So in the United States, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. In Canada, the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency. These bodies have a tax code that determines how much income tax you're going to pay at the federal level and at the state or provincial level, and sometimes even at the metropolitan level if you're living in a large, densely populated metropolitan area. And once again, you need to be quite aware in your business of what goes on in the IRS and the CRA that affects your company, because the consequence of not following any of these, certainly the consequence of not paying your tax, is that you're going to be penalized, you're going to pay interest penalties, and you may even be investigated and audited and so on. So pay close attention to your tax rules. Another category, the fourth one, is really what I call general financial behaviors, interprovincial, between state, crossing state lines. In the US, there's a body called the Securities and Exchange Commission, which sets the rules for corporate behavior, for raising capital and that sort of thing. In Canada, it's called the CSA, the Canadian Securities Administration, and it goes in many cases province by province. There's also a national body. So one needs to be very well aware of the financial oversight that is brought about by these bodies. Another one, the fifth one, by the way, these are all in random order. They're not in any hierarchical order. Your HOA, your homeowners association, whatever it's called, it's going to have rules. And they could be as simple as how do you keep your grass, what kind of junk you can store on your land, what you can do with the appearance of your property. And it certainly governs perhaps water and sewer or lawn cutting, landscaping, general cleanliness, street cleaning, even snow removal in the northern parts of the continent, and so on. So one must be very well aware of what goes on in this area. The next topic would be city bylaws or town bylaws. There's a whole set of rules that govern where you can park, what you can do, Is your area zoned for the kind of business that you want? Do you have smoke that emanates from a chimney? Do you have gases or other items that are exhausted from your plant? Do you have sawdust? Do you have noise? Do you have other things that are governed perhaps by your city or town bylaws? It's your duty to make yourself aware of these things. Another category would be provincial or state laws, which govern employment. How do you deal with people? Can you hire immigrants? Do you have to have legal staff that are legally permitted to work in your state or province? There's a whole set of a body of laws that govern these. And as a responsible business owner, you're going to not do something under the table. You're going to operate within the law and within the just laws that are passed by your jurisdiction. Another category of the regulatory system would be what I call industrial regulation. And so I'm thinking here of codes, not only building codes, but codes of conduct, codes of practice. For example, if you're a dentist, a doctor, an accountant, maybe a consultant, or you're in the food business, you're going to be governed by codes of content and codes of behavior. Even if you're in an industry that perhaps has a self-governing role to it, you might be subject to best practices. So if you're a consultant, a management consultant, if you're an accounting person, a lawyer, or if you belong to any number of professional practice, even white collar and blue collar professional practice, you're going to be subject to industry best practices. And in some cases, you'll have a governing body that's responsible for the behavior of the profession. And that behavior that responsibility has been actually devolved from a higher authority to the industry itself. So you need to be very well aware, not only for yourself as a business, but for whom you hire. The board of your company, if you're a not-for-profit organization, a 501c3, or a society, or a charity, or a corporate board, a limited liability corporation, you're going to have a charter, you're going to have bylaws, you're going to have corporate policies, you're going to have codes of conduct, and these all are going to be governing your behavior as a corporation. And some of them are common good practices, but others are simply laws that govern and restrict your behavior or channel it in a certain direction. Another category would be the lease, the simple lease that you have on your building or on a piece of land or on an operating business that you have. A lease is a contract, yes, but the lease will specify things that are governing your behavior. So for example, if you lease a building, it will have various properties inside of the lease that talk about adherence to local bylaws or adherence to the rules of the bank that perhaps is financing the organization. So your lease is a very complicated document in many ways because it puts an onerous set of responsibilities on you, and you need to be paying close attention to it. You also have, if you are a limited liability corporation, the USA, a unanimous shareholders agreement that governs all sorts of things, how you can make decisions inside of the company, how voting is done, what happens if somebody wants to exit the business, what happens if somebody is incapacitated, is divorced, dies, or becomes unfit for office in some way. How do you deal with that sort of thing? So many unanimous shareholders agreements could be many, many multi-pages long, and they could be dealing with complex matters, but they're all agreements. They are contracts, and so they must be part of the regulatory system, and it is expected that you will operate with one of these. You cannot operate without one of these, at least in most jurisdictions. Another category would be what I call licensing or certification. If you are, let's say, a rendering plant to dispose of animal byproducts, or the food industry where slaughtering of cattle goes on, there are certain standards for how your physical plant disposes of things. If you're in the mining business, if you're handling refuse, garbage, there are licenses or certifications that you must get, and you must adhere to some standards, And in order to maintain your standards, you must reapply, or you must be relicensed or recertified, sometimes on an annual basis, sometimes on a multi-year basis, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. But the thing is that you're going to be required to recertify and license yourself. And I guess my final category, it's the old category of other. There are other laws, regulations, bylaws, certifications, guidelines, policies, and practices, and contracts and agreements, even joint operating authorities. The idea regulating business is definitely well entrenched in the Western mind and in our cultures and in our economies. The idea then, as a business owner, is you would pay close attention, careful attention, to know everything that matters to you. It is not necessary that you become a lawyer, and it isn't necessary that you spend a lot of money on professional advice, although a good professional advice is valuable and it's not that hard to find, really. What is difficult, though, is going to one source to get all of this. I've listed 13 categories of regulatory behavior, regulations that govern your business and restrict you in so many ways. There is no one single source. If you went to your attorney or your lawyer, they would still have to go to the various jurisdictions. And so it is important that you make a checklist of all 13 of these items and really spend the time, either in the run-up to your business or during the early stages of your business, so that you're sure that you're operating on this side of the law. If you need a business license, or if you need a certification of some kind to operate in your jurisdiction, it is your duty to figure out the answer ahead of time, and it's your duty to understand what the legislation requires. So, in summary, the regulatory system is designed for the public good, the common good, but it's a restriction on your business. It governs your operations. It does restrict your freedom to operate. It's a cost to your business, definitely. It's a reduction in your revenues. It's a reduction in the activity levels. It's a way to govern and to reduce the impact of your business on all of these various categories and situations out there in the wider marketplace, in the wider world. The idea is that the regulatory system controls you. It is purported that it's for the common good, and for the most part it is. Sometimes we can fight the regulatory system, we can make change, we can lobby, we can bring about a reduction in the stress level or the tension that it causes for our businesses. Not always, though, and as the old saying, you can't fight City Hall. In some ways, if you're a business owner, you don't have time to be worrying about the legislative and the regulatory system. And at the same time, though, because it's your livelihood and it's your business, you do have to pay attention to it. So that's a quick rundown on the regulatory system. If you are able to navigate the system, and for the most part, your industry association would be one of your strongest tools. People that are in the business already would be well aware. So if you're starting a business or thinking of acquiring a business, perhaps buying a business, one of the best places to go is to the industry associations, and everybody has them. You can talk to people, you can understand what their current issues are, what they're fighting, and what the regulatory climate is. Of course, your tax accountant, your lawyer, your attorney, and other professional advisors can help you to navigate the regulatory system. Bottom line, it's a restriction on your ability to operate, and the more smoothly that you undertake to understand all of these regulatory systems and laws and bylaws and certifications and so on, the better off you'll be in your business. Some of it is worth fighting, of course, for, and it's worth making changes for, but it's a very challenging field. So regulatory system, pay close attention to it. It's very important. It can govern quite a lot of your activity, and it can really increase your costs and reduce your revenues and your profitability if you don't pay close attention. So good luck with this. God bless. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. Thanks for joining me today.